Man, you guys do that well. That's a great round of applause. All glory be to God. I'm glad to be here this morning with you guys. I'm Emmanuel Williams, as Chase introduced me there. I'm going to serve as the lead pastor of City of Shalom Church. That's going to be launching in the spring of next year. We're planting in inner city and downtown Rocky Mount. If you know the term inner city, it's a socioeconomic term for poor communities. So we're there, as he said already, doing work inside of the community. If you want to put a picture up, it's like one of our housing projects. You see our mission is build blighted neighborhoods into beautiful and beloved neighborhoods. So everywhere you see inside of those inner city neighborhoods, blight everywhere. Homes look like this, not very habitable, and we're able to change them into this, into beautiful homes. Um, and we tell our neighbors, hey, we do that because we're seeking your flourishing as God is seeking our flourishing. So we're helping residents inside of this community become homeowners. And we've leveraged that, meeting the material needs of our neighbors, to actually plant this church to meet their most desperate need, which is spiritual in nature, to see gospel transformation of the soul. And so we're meeting the spiritual need by planting this church. We're excited in the beginning stages of that. And glad to be here with you guys, to be in gospel partnership, hopefully, too, with Reach Fellowship Church. And so let's turn to Matthew 16. We'll get into the word this morning. That's where we'll be. I want to begin with a question. You ever think you're seeing something clearly, only to find out later you clearly weren't, right? There's a time in my life when I thought I had a shot. I had this clear vision in high school. Can you believe that? What I wanted to do with my life. I thought I was going to be an NBA player or go to the NFL. I was convinced of that. I'm going after this dream. That got straightened out real quick. One day, we're inside of this film session, basketball. I'm one of the two sophomores who made the varsity basketball team. Coach Herb comes in. We're heading to regional, so we're on a high plane, man. We're thinking we're all that. And so he comes in, throws this newspaper down on a desk, and he begins to go in on these, hard stats. I mean, just cold, brutal stats. He says, hey, do y'all know how hard it is to get to Division I basketball, to play on that level? And he continued on. He said, did you know that only 1% of those that make it to the Division I collegiate level to play basketball only make it to the NBA? And then he continued on. He said, did you know this? Only 450 people play inside of the NBA. So they have to be one of the 450 best players, not just in the United States, but in the world. In that moment, I don't know why he decided to do that, but he crushed all of our dreams and visions. We literally were just like, okay, we get the point. He didn't say it explicitly. He was like, none of y'all are making it to the NBA. But that was the point. To this day, I don't know why he did that, but I'd say this. He was right. Here I am, a church planter, and leading a nonprofit. Later on, though, I'll be doing education inside of the inner city. Never ceased to amaze me whenever teachers would come in and be inside a classroom. They ask students, hey, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? And the answer they give almost every single time inside of the inner city context, more poor communities, is the same thing I was dreaming. I want to be an NBA player. I want to be a rapper. I want to be an NFL star. Or the girls would be like, I want to be Beyonce, Hear me. I'm not knocking their dreams. I know ambition is good to have and pursuing excellence is true. But here's a deeper truth. Those weren't just career goals for us. They were visions. They were pictures of what we thought the good life looks like. Visions that are shaped by what our culture puts on a pedestal. Visions that are shaped by what seems most admirable, most celebrated, most valuable. And whether we realize it or not, we were being formed by those visions. You and I, even as children, we weren't just answering questions about the careers we want to have. No, we were absorbing a picture of who we should become. And a picture shaped by the loudest voices. Shaped by the brightest lights, the most glorified lives that are placed before our eyes. Here's the point I'm trying to make. We're all being shaped by what we place before our eyes as the most important thing. Jesus says it this way in Matthew 6:22 through 23. The eye is the lamp of the body. If the eye is healthy, your whole body would be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. D.A. Carson, one of the great New Testament scholars, he said this to help us understand it. He says, the eye is the faculty of spiritual perception. It's our internal vision, or our mind's eye, if you will. It's what we fix our eyes on in our internal vision or our mind's eye as most valuable. The word healthy eye here that Jesus uses inside of the Greek, it means an eye that is unified. That mind's eye that's undivided. It's properly folded together. So a healthy eye, that mind's eye, it's a single-minded, clear, and focused eye. It's full of light, Jesus says as well. But the bad eye, that mind's eye, it's a divided mind. It's confused. It's full of darkness. And that's what makes the passage we'll focus on today very, very unsettling. Just before the scene in the main text we're going to read, Peter confesses that Jesus is the Christ. It's a powerful revelation. But what follows makes it clear that Peter's eye, his internal mind's eye, his perspective, his vision is not clear. And that's the tension I want to bring to the surface in our hearts this morning. We can confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, but if our heart is still clinging to our own vision of what life should be, if our inner eye or our mind's eye is still fixed on what you think is most valuable, then you're walking in darkness, even while claiming walking in the light. So here's the question I want us to sit on as we go through this text. What vision is shaping your life? What have you fixed your eyes on that's most valuable? What do you want more than anything else? What picture do you have in mind and vision you have in mind when all your hopes and dreams actually do come true? Here's the main idea I want us to see. God has a vision for forming you. Let me pray and we'll hop into the text. Father, I thank you for your grace and your mercy. Lord, I pray, open our mouths wide to receive your word this morning. By doing so and receiving it, transform our hearts, convict us, challenge us, encourage us where we need. And Father, we are desperately dependent on you, Lord, to continue to form us by your word this morning. Sanctify us in your truth, for your word is true. In Jesus' name, amen. Look at Matthew 16, verse 21. It says, "And from that time Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised." This is a vision. Jesus has a healthy eye. It's full of light. It's singularly focused. Although he knows what this vision is, it seems kind of a dark vision and an undesirable vision. The text says he must go to Jerusalem. Now that's just not a throwaway description of where Jesus is going. No, it's a compact meaning behind where he's going. Jerusalem is a place where darkness will be concentrated. It's not just a holy city, it's where the spiritual warfare is thick. It's the seat of religious corruption. It's the center of demonic resistance. It's the place where power will be abused and where injustice is systematized, where the righteous are actually betrayed. It's a vision of the Father that Jesus is walking into. He's walking into the midst of the deepest depths of human depravity. In Jerusalem, he will face rejection. In Jerusalem, he'll face false accusation. In Jerusalem, he'll face the betrayal from friends. In Jerusalem, he'll face silence from his own people. In Jerusalem, he'll face mockery from leaders. In Jerusalem, he'll face abandonment in prayer. In Jerusalem, he'll be stripped of his dignity. In Jerusalem, he's going to be nailed to a cross, experiencing the height of pain and the agony of physical violence. This is the Father's vision for Jesus, to go into Jerusalem, where he'll walk into the midst of the deepest depths of human depravity. He'll plunge into the most excruciating problems of human pain, and he'll experience the universal problems of human plight. Get this, Jesus doesn't avoid it. He goes straight into it. Some gospels say that he walked into that vision, that he went into Jerusalem and his face was set like a flint. There's something noticeable here before I move on, that Jesus isn't walking into this vision timidly, but tenaciously. He's not wavering, but like a flint, like a solid rock. He's walking into this vision strong and courageous. Lord, give us that courage. Without fear, although he knows his fate. That's the weight of the vision. He's walking into a death sentence in the midst of darkness. And here's Peter's response to that vision. Verse 22. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you." You know, there's some villains inside of movies, like Commodus inside of The Gladiator. you see in that first scene, and I know I just wanted to go through just through the screen and just like end his life because I don't like Commodus inside of Gladiator. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gladiator. So there's some villains inside of movies that you just don't like, right? But then there's some villains like Denzel Washington in The Training Day. I don't recommend that for kids. It's debatable whether he's a good villain, but I'm rooting for him by the end of the movie, right? I was really hoping that he would be able to pay off the Russian mob and not get killed. There's a way that people can get us to sympathize with the villain inside of movies, and how they do that is they humanize them. That's what I want to do really quick here with Peter. All right? I believe Peter fits the bill of Romans 12:1. What Paul says every follower of Jesus Christ should be doing. In Romans 12, verse 1, he said, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice. I believe Peter wants to do this, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship, or some translation says, is your reasonable service. You know, Peter believes, going to make the argument, he believes that he is, in this very moment, offering reasonable service to God, and that's why he rebukes Jesus. Why? Because the vision and the version of the Messiah that Jesus just shared, Peter and the disciples, they find that repulsive and repugnant. They have no appetite for that because they've actually never heard of this vision and version of the Messiah. Here's a vision and version of the Messiah that they do know about. He would be a royal conqueror and restorer of Israel that didn't suffer, but he would subdue. He'd be a national redeemer that vindicated God's people and put all of their enemies underneath their foot. He'd be a prophetic or a priestly figure, a new Moses, if you will, that would confront injustice but not be crucified by it. So in short, the Messiah would be a person of prestige and power and political victory, not a Messiah that would suffer, bleed, and die and be utterly humiliated. Listen, guys, Peter is more than willing to die for that vision and version of the Messiah that we just talked about. The royal conqueror, the restorer of Israel. He's not kidding when he says over and over again to Jesus, I will die for you. Matthew 26, 33 through 35. He says it here. Jesus talking about how the disciples will fall away from me. Peter answered, though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away. Jesus said to him, truly, I tell you, Peter, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said to him, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And all the disciples said the same. Stick with me. Peter is willing to die for the vision and version of the Messiah that he understands from his upbringing, his religion, and his culture. A royal conqueror, a national redeemer, a ruler of power and prestige and political victory. Don't miss this. If Peter went to war for that version and vision of the Messiah that he grew up understanding, and he survives the war, guess what? He'll reign in honor. His culture and his people will be preserved. He'll share in the Messiah's glory. There'll be no shame. There'll only be fame. The world will be gained. As Jesus later on says, what would it profit of a man to gain the whole world? That's what he's referencing. The whole world will be gained if the Messiah conquers with him. But get this. Even if Peter goes to war with that vision and version of the Messiah and he dies, he'll die with honor. He'll die protecting his heritage as a patriot. He'll die in glory. He'll die with no shame, only legacy, dying for God's victorious king. So whether he lives with this version and vision of the conquering king, or he dies with this vision and version of the conquering king, it will profit him. But if he dies for a suffering servant, which in his time would be deemed a fraudulent Messiah, he'll die in dishonor. He'll die as one who betrayed his own people. He'll die in infamy and shame, as if he gave his life for a fraud, basically. And worse than that, if he lives for the suffering servant, which would be a fraudulent Messiah, he'll live with dishonor. He'll be rejected by his own people. He'll be marked with shame. There will be no glory. There will be no reward, only suffering. Based on the vision and the understanding of the Messiah that Peter grew up knowing and was shaped by, guys, Peter's rebuke is reasonable. Even further, based on that vision and understanding of the Messiah, Peter's rebuke is actually a reasonable act of service to God. And the rebuke Peter gives, it isn't soft. Commentators say that the Greek there is very strong. It's almost violent. It mirrors when Jesus rebukes demons. So Peter is treating Jesus' words not just like they're dangerous, but like they're demonic. And he thinks he's doing this in service for God. Stick with me. Thinks he's doing this in service for God. How did he get here? A wrong vision. A bad eye. Jesus says the eye is the lamp of the body. But if the eye is dark, how much darkness is in you? In other words, having a bad vision, my friends, for your life isn't just going the wrong direction. It's violently opposing God's direction. Having a bad vision for your life isn't just a wrong vision. It is a wicked vision filled with darkness, and it's aligned with the demonic. Look at what Jesus says here in verse 23. But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a hindrance to me. For you're not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." What was Peter's vision? We just said it's for the Messiah to come and conquer and overthrow the oppressive regime of Rome and to literally conquer all the kingdoms and rule the world. That's the reference to what will it profit a man to gain the whole world. Here from this Messiah conquering all the kingdoms of the world and ruling the world, he would gain the world. Does that vision sound familiar to you? It doesn't just come from Peter. It's the same vision Satan gives Jesus in the temptation of the wilderness. It's a vision that comes from the mind of Satan himself. In Matthew 4, 8 through 10, he says this, Satan taking Jesus up, "Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, 'All these things I give you, if you fall down and worship me.' Then Jesus said to him, 'Begone, Satan.'" Peter's vision isn't just any wrong vision. It's a vision of Satan, and it comes from the mind of Satan. Jesus tells him, just like he told Satan, "Get behind me. Be gone, Satan." Hear me, friends. Jesus is revealing to us that having a wrong vision for your life is no small matter. There's only two visions that you could choose from. One of those visions for your life comes from God. The other vision of your life comes from the demonic or the powers of darkness. And here's a more startling truth. The vision that is shaped by the demonic is so deceiving, it's so darkening, that we can actually believe as we're walking into it, we're doing reasonable service for God when we're actually actively opposing God in his vision. Listen, friends, the people who crucified Jesus, they were like Peter. They weren't people who were living riotous lives, but they thought that they were devoted to God. Jesus says this elsewhere to the disciples as he's describing those people in their future persecution in John 16, 2 through 3. He says, "They will put you out of synagogues. And indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you will think he is offering service to God." Here's the question. If the vision shaped by the demonic is so deceptive, it's so darkening, how can we discern whether we're focused on the wrong vision? Jesus provides an indicator here to Peter. He says, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a hindrance to me. For you're not setting your mind," here it is, "you're not setting your mind on things of God, but on the things of man." If our vision is if it's shaped by the demonic, it is so deceptive and it's darkening, how can we know that we're discerning and not focused on the wrong vision? Jesus reveals it here. It's by what we set our minds on. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, more often than not, what is my mind set on? For many of us, if we're being honest, it's often filled with things that feel urgent, but they're not ultimate. It's the mortgage, it's the next promotion, it's the kids' schedules, it's the college application, it's the house projects that's coming up, it's the rising grocery bills, it's the next vacation we're counting down to, it's the news cycle that keeps us anxious, it's the phone that we keep scrolling in, it's the future that we keep on calculating for. And get me, none of those things are evil, they're part of life. But when they become the main thing, when they occupy the most space in our minds, they start shaping what we hope for, what we fear, what we pursue. The danger isn't always what we're doing, my friends. It's what we're setting our minds on. What we're constantly rehearsing, what we're planning, what we're imagining, what we're craving. Paul doesn't say lose your mind when he gives us instruction later. He doesn't say don't think. Jesus doesn't say lose your mind and don't think. But no, the scriptures tell us to set our mind on things that are above in Colossians 3:2. Here's the difference, the deeper question. Is my mind set on what matters most, or is it set on what matters right now? Because whatever we set our minds on is what forms us. Paul says it this way as he continues on in chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship or your reasonable service to God. But how do we know we're actually doing that? Here it goes in verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Look, guys, Jesus wasn't just checking Peter. He was teaching us all something here. He's teaching us the same thing Paul's trying to teach us in Romans chapter 12, that whatever vision you set your mind on will start shaping your soul. Here's the question. It's not a question of whether you're being formed or not. The question is, what vision is forming you? Or better yet, whose vision is forming you? Paul says, do not be conformed to this world. Now, when Paul says worlds, he's not talking about mountains and oceans, just the earth, the dirt and sky. No, he's talking about an era, a time under a ruler, a spirit of this age, an era where sin, Satan, death, they actually rule the world. And Paul is pleading, don't be conformed to that world. Don't be conformed to the powers of darkness in this present age. Because the powers of darkness will shape you slowly, friends. They form us, not through things that look wicked, but through normal things that aren't wicked. I'll give you an example. I genuinely think that the American dream, although it's not evil, it becomes idolatrous of a vision that most people are actually willing to die for. You know, the American dream is a cultural idea rooted in the belief that anyone, regardless of background, birth, they can achieve success, prosperity, upward mobility through hard work, determination, and initiative, and get whatever they want. Here's the signs I think that kind of indicate whether that idolatry is playing in our heart when we think success equals stuff or materialism. You count blessings by your bank account. You measure worth by the square footage you have. You fear being broke more than being broken before God. When your value is comfort over calling. You won't move unless it's safe. You won't give unless there's a surplus. You dodge discomfort like it's the devil. When you value the me over the we. You grind for the dream, but you ignore your neighbor. You call independence freedom, but it's actually just isolation. When you assume that hard work equals good identity. You only feel valuable when you're productive. You rest. You don't rest. And when you do, you feel like a failure. You're building a resume and not your soul. When you use Jesus as a tool and he's actually not your treasure. Use faith to fuel your goals. You want God to bless your plans and not shape them. Your prayers chase success and actually not surrender and submission to God. When the blessing, like the American dream, has to be like, it looks like, man, if it's not rich, if it's not easy, or it's not upward, it must not be God. You can't see Christ inside of your struggle. You miss him inside of the margins. Hear me. This is not just one vision that's contrary to God. There's a lot of visions that are contrary to God. And any vision outside of God's vision begins to deform us. They don't make us more alive. They deform us and make us more dead and less human. But Paul tells us, do not be conformed to this world. Because get me, friends, God's goal ain't to lead us to deformation and death, but it's to lead us to abundant life. I love how St. Irenaeus says, he says, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. My friends, God is not looking to deform us, but to form us more to flourish. But how does he do it? Through us letting go of the vision we have for our lives and on our mind, and growing our desire to crave the vision that comes from his mind. A vision that goes beyond changing a little bit about who you are. Not just a little bit, no. Paul says, but be transformed. God is not looking to tweak you. He's not looking just to adjust you. He wants to transform you. Metamorphosis. Think of the caterpillar as he goes across and he turns around and gets in that cocoon and he comes out as a new creature. God does not just want to polish up your old self. He wants to make you brand new, friends. The Greek word for renewing, metanoia, it means a full-on conversion, not behavior change, not image rehab, not self-help with a little Jesus seasoning on it. No, conversion. Love how C.S. Lewis says it here. He says this about us. He said, we never wanted to be made into the sort of creatures he's going to make us into. Never wanted this. But the question is not what we intended ourselves to be, but what he intended us to be when he made us. How are we going to be made into the sort of creatures God is wanting to make us into? It's by making his vision the most valuable to us and seeking that vision. Here's a question. What is that vision? Verse 24 through 26. Then Jesus told his disciples, here's the vision, guys. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? This is God's vision for Peter, the disciples, and all of us in this room. This is God's way of making us into the sort of creatures that he's wanting to make us into. Here in the text, Jesus is using the calling of a rabbi during his time. In the first century Jewish world, rabbis were not just teachers of the Torah, they were interpreters of life. So their disciples, their pupils, didn't just learn information, they followed literally the rabbi closely. They would adopt their way of life. So a rabbi's call meant, come live like me. Learn my teachings. Walk in my footsteps. Literally, they would follow behind the rabbi. They would follow him, often inside of a line, actually. Conform your life to my interpretation of God's word. So to follow a rabbi was to submit your whole self, your time, your mind, your habits, to the process of becoming like that rabbi. And Jesus is saying to us, if you're going to come after me, going to follow me, deny yourself. Lay down your self-centered desires, your comfort and your control. Say no to the version of life that revolves around you. Take up your cross. Embrace sacrifice. Choose struggle over not choosing struggle. Suffering and obedience, even when it costs. Carry what God has called you to, not just what's convenient. Follow me. Walk in step with Jesus. Not ahead of him, not a part of him, or far apart from him. Let his life, his love, and his mission define your direction. Lose your life and find it. Let go of lesser visions so that you can lay hold of true life, friends. Eternal purpose is not found inside of self-preservation, but in surrender. I end with the questions that we began with. What vision is shaping your life? What have you fixed your eyes on that's most valuable? What do you want more than anything else? What picture do you have in mind when all your hopes and dreams come true? Is it having enough in the savings account and retirement account so that you never have to worry about money again? Is it finally settling down in the dream neighborhood with the updated kitchen, the good schools, and the peaceful weekends? Is it building a reputation, being respected and applauded and admired for your success and your accomplishments? Is it running a thriving business and being seen as the kind of leaders others want to look up to? Is it living a quiet, safe, comfortable life where things are predictable, under control, the American dream that we can have without any sort of drama? Is it traveling freely and enjoying life and avoiding anything that feels too heavy or inconvenient? What do you want more than anything else? What picture do you have in mind when all your hopes and dreams actually do come true? Here's what Jesus is saying to us, friends. Take whatever picture that is, whatever vision that is, and sacrifice it. Give it up. Just like my coach Herb crushed our NBA dreams. Jesus is doing the same here in this verse with us. He's saying in this new way of life, the answers to those questions no longer actually belong to you. I know I asked you them, but they don't belong to you. They belong to God. What is his vision for you? Well, we've seen it inside the text. It's for you to embrace his way of life, self-denial, sacrificial living, dependence upon his direction, giving up your life. But what's the result of all of that? It's his ultimate vision. It's for you to become like Jesus. Let's be honest. Let's be honest about that. At first, that vision, becoming like Jesus, it actually doesn't feel exciting. Not like, going to the Swiss Alps and having a good vacation, 5-star vacation. It doesn't shine like a dream job. It doesn't thrill like an Instagram-worthy life. We got to keep it real. We don't have the appetite for God's vision right now. And that's why Paul says we must be transformed by the renewing of our mind. In other words, transformation is necessary for us to grow our appetite, our affections, and our adorations for that vision. You say, man, becoming like Jesus, that's a boring vision. Well, that's okay. That's what transformation is about. It's to make it the most appealing thing inside of your life. You say, becoming like Jesus, that's not an exciting vision. That's okay. That's what transformation is about. It's to make it the most exciting thing in your life. You say, man, becoming like Jesus, that's a pretty dull vision. That's okay. That's what transformation is about. It's to make it the most bright and enlivening vision inside of your life, to become like Jesus, to renew your mind consistently by praying day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. Not my will be done, but your will be done, Lord. One of the most beautiful things to witness in the New Testament is Peter's transformation. From the Gospels to the letters he actually writes to the church. Here's what we witness. He's a man who goes from having no appetite of God's vision, being rebuked as we saw inside of the text, to finally submitting to God's vision, although he's not craving it. Peter didn't start, as we saw here, loving God's vision. He misunderstood it. He resisted it. But in John 21, 9 through 23, the risen Christ, he revisits Peter, and not with rebuke, but with restoration. It's around a charcoal fire, the same kind of fire where Peter once denied him. Jesus gives Peter a second chance to declare his love. 3 questions, 3 commissions. Feed my sheep, tend my lambs, follow me. Jesus even foretells him of this future vision, which includes suffering, submission, and death, a road Peter once rejected. And at this point, Peter is willing to submit. Though not fully surrender. He still looks around in John 21 and verse 21, and he's like, what about John? What about this man? Jesus gently corrects him. What does that have to do with you? You follow me, Peter. Peter's learning to trust God's vision, but he's not hungry for it yet. But by the time we get to 1 Peter 4 and he's writing the letter to the church, everything has changed. Peter no longer just accepts God's will, but he embraces it. He urges others to, in verse 1, arm yourselves with the same mindset of Christ, to live not for human passions, but for the will of God, in verse 2. He doesn't just endure suffering, he actually rejoices in it and tells them to in verse 13. He entrusts his soul to God while actually doing good, he says in verse 19. So Peter has gone from resisting the cross to bearing it, and then inviting others to do the same. That will be our journey of transformation. So I leave you with this. Questions we have. What do you want more than anything else? What picture and vision do you have in your eyes when all your hopes and dreams come true? Whatever it is, surrender it and press towards God's vision for you. Spare me but a moment as I rush to close. The van can make their way up. Here's the good news. Jesus says, if any man would come after me, or they follow me. Yes, the rabbis of Jesus' time, they would have their followers actually choose them. But Jesus is not merely a rabbi. He's our righteous Redeemer. He chose us to follow him. You did not choose him, but he chose you. He bled and died for you, and he has a vision for you. And even better news, he has called you to come after him. He's already supplied the means for what you need to become what he wants from you to become from him. For the scriptures say, if he called you to follow him, I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. When all things are made new by him, he'll do that. He who began a good work in you, my friends, he will complete his good work in you. And what work is he doing? I love it how Gardner C. Taylor, that great preacher, once said, that you and I are so destined to become children of God one day. And we become so much like Jesus that the angels, looking at one another and looking out at us, and looking back at Jesus, and looking out at us again and looking back at Jesus, they'll ask the question, which one is Jesus? Now, don't get on your theological high there. What he's getting at is what John says here. Dear friends, we are God's children now, and what we shall be has not yet been revealed. But this we know, when he appears, we shall be made like him, for we shall see him as he is. That's the vision. So I say, as Paul said to you guys this morning, I press. I press towards that mark in that vision. I press, sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes even being leveled to the ground, but I press towards the mark. Sometimes when I'm feeble, sometimes when I'm failing, sometimes when I'm weeping, sometimes when I'm mourning, sometimes when I'm discontent, but I press towards that mark. Sometimes in good report, sometimes in evil report, but I press towards that vision. Do you press, my brothers and sisters? I know that life that you envision may not go like you want it to be. I know what it is to have sorrows. I even know what it is to not know what way you're turning sometimes. I know what it is to drench your pillow sometimes, some nights with tears. I even know what it is to hope against hope that you don't wake up the next morning. Life can be very difficult, but I challenge you, press towards that vision of redemption, my friends, where all things will be made right and we will be transformed to become like the Son of God, as that old hymn goes. O soul, are you wearied in trouble? No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. So, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face. The things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we